Horror Month. You are all my maniacs now.
Welcome back to Horror Month 2018, and I got a really great film for you tonight. And this was actually a spontaneous buy. I was at Best Buy going to get something else, and I saw this on the shelf, and I'm like, oh man, I haven't seen that movie in a long time. And then I picked it up and turned it around, I'm like, Scream Factory, whoop, got it off the shelf. Whoop. So this actually came out a while ago. I'm talking like years ago. Somehow it went under my radar. I mean, I may have heard it come out and was busy doing other things, buying other things, watching, reviewing. So yeah, I didn't pick it up, but for whatever reason, I was just standing there and I'm like, it's horror month, you know, I need to get at least a couple spontaneous buys here, and this is one of them. And let me tell you, I am so glad I picked this movie up. Now, I haven't seen this film, I couldn't even tell you the last time I saw this film, so it was basically like watching an entirely new movie for me because I didn't remember anything about it. Now, I know this came out back when the werewolf movies were very popular because there was a run on werewolf movies. They had The Wolfen, they had The Howling, they had American Werewolf in London, and there was all these just great werewolf movies coming out. This one was actually directed by somebody who don't direct movies anymore, as far as I know, Joe Dante. And Joe Dante was one of those directors that came in, did a bunch of really great stuff, and then just disappeared somewhere. If you don't know Joe Dante, he did a little movie called Gremlins, and he also did Gremlins 2, and he did that other film that I really liked, which was called Inner Space. And he did a lot of really great imaginative films, and this is one of his few real just horror films. However, this isn't a straight horror movie either. It does have a lot of really dark comedy in it, and that's why I love this movie so much. So it starts out with this reporter played by Dee Wallace. Now, I can tell you something too. Dee Wallace, I don't know what I've ever seen her in except for E.T. and this. She is an incredible actress. She made this movie. She was giving her Academy Award performance in this film, and she was what made this movie real. And she seemed like she was real in the movie. And the acting in this, you don't really see that often in a horror film from this caliber, and she was so good in this film, and that's again one of the reasons why I liked it so much is because of that. Oh yeah, also because Slim Pickens was in here. I mean, he really made the movie too. So Dee Wallace plays this reporter, and she is on a trail of a serial killer right in the beginning of this movie, and it's a really great opening to a film. You don't really expect that, especially in a werewolf film. So she's tracking down this person that has been stalking her or is a serial killer. I'm not going to give any more plots away other than that, but she ends up finding him, and then something happens, and then she goes out into the country to try to relax. So when she gets out there, that's when all the werewolf stuff starts happening. Now, like I said, there's a lot of really dark humor in this movie, and it's pretty funny. I mean, it really is. There's a lot of scenes where I just laughed out loud. But the good part about this, too, is it's also pretty scary. It mixes the fun with the scares in a way sort of like Return of the Living Dead, but not as goofy fun as Return of the Living Dead. This is more just, I don't know how to explain it. It's just much dark humor. I mean, stuff that's not supposed to be funny, but it's obviously funny. The actual werewolves in this film, I mean, come on. When they were showing them, I was just like, holy crap, they're amazing looking. Why don't werewolves look like that now? What happened to werewolves today? Wow, look at that werewolf. I mean, that's how good they looked in this movie. I didn't know who did the effects, but every time they showed them, I was just blown away. And the transformation effects, of course, were some of the best ever in any werewolf movie. You had, the muzzle being pulled out, and the teeth coming out, and the nails coming out, and the body, shape shifting and cracking and all, just fantastic effects. So when they actually did show the werewolf, I was like, oh man, that is like the best looking werewolf I have ever seen. And while we were sitting there watching, I kept telling my wife, why don't they look like this anymore? What happened to them? Why can't they look like this? Because they were big, and they were scary, and they were threatening. And if you want to get a good werewolf movie, that's how you make a werewolf. You make it huge and scary, and it's coming after you, and it's like, you know, this is how you do it. Now, for the clarity of the film, spectacular. I mean, Scream Factory just did an unbelievably great job with this. This movie is super crystal clear, and it also helps because it does actually have, you know, a lot of scenery with the trees, and they go out to I think the ocean or the river or wherever they're at, and all of that looks spectacular in this film. The writing, the directing, everything in this movie. Now, there's a lot of werewolf movies to compare The Howling to, and out of all of those, especially the classic ones, like everybody always talks about American Werewolf in London, but you really don't hear that much about The Howling. I mean, it doesn't ever come up very often in any conversation, because you always hear about, people still talk about The Exorcist and talk about, you know, Amityville Horror once in a while, and you know, all the classics. I think this should be up there with those. It's one of our horror gems that we have out there that is kind of just is out there, and nobody ever really acknowledges it anymore. And I think they ruined this series, though, by making a bunch of terrible sequels. I think there's like 5 sequels to this now, and I don't think I ever seen any of the sequels, but from what I read, they're all supposed to be just horrible. So you got one incredible film, and they're just running the lake dry, you know, trying to suck out all the money they can just because the first one was so good, but they can't figure out how to make any other ones as good. I would love it if somebody could make a sequel, an actual sequel to this. It would be kind of cool to where this ends, and then the, you know, sequel would start like a day later or something like that. That'd be awesome, and having the same time frame, but I know it never happened, but still, you know, I can dream, okay? Overall, I actually thought this was better than American Werewolf in London, because American Werewolf in London was good, but this was better, a lot better. This was great. I mean, this is that good. And again, I just picked it up only because Scream Factory had done it. Now, speaking of Scream Factory, this actually has a pretty cool cover on it. Now, I don't really have the time to go into a whole lot of detail about what the cover looks like. Pretty cool, right? And it's really great artwork. And just like Scream Factory, if you flip this around, it actually has the original artwork on the other side of it. And I can tell you, I actually like that original artwork. I think it's a really cool cover. It's a very simple cover, but it really just gives you the idea of what this film is going to be. You know, The Howling. I mean, what else do you really want? You don't really want to give away the cool werewolf effects right on the front page. So overall, I love this movie. I absolutely love this movie. I can't say more about it. If you've never seen The Howling, because it's such an old film, and if you love horror films, and especially if you love werewolf movies, get it. I highly recommend this movie. Scream Factory did a fantastic job with this. So overall, The Howling, for me, gets the Golden Machete. Alright, so again, lack of time, I asked my wife to come in and do all the extras that Scream Factory has on here, because, you know, Scream Factory always loads these down with extras. So she agreed, and she did a fantastic job on The Blob, and she did just as fantastic job here on The Howling. So here is my wife for Horror Month, Becky Graves, and this is the Scream Factory extras on The Howling.
Welcome back. It's 2018, it's Horror Month, and I'm Becky Graves. I'm here to take a look at the extras on The Howling. This is a Scream Factory release, so there are a lot of extras. I'm gonna just dive right in. The first extra is called Howling's Eternal, and it's a conversation with Stephen A. Lane, who is the person that actually got the first movie made. He said he was walking through an airport, he saw the book that this is based on, and he liked it and found the guy who had the rights and worked on getting it into development. He was actually a person, Stephen Lane was a person who owned a lot of movie theaters in California and Nevada. So he wasn't really in the film industry before this. This was just kind of his entrance into the movie making business, I guess. And it kind of goes on from there, talks about how they got the first movie produced. And then he does go on to talk about all of the sequels briefly. and his degree of involvement in them. There's apparently been like 8 or 9 Howling movies. I had no idea. He wasn't very involved with the later ones, obviously, but he does touch on them and discuss them in a little bit. It did drag on a little long, especially when he was talking about all of the million sequels. But yeah, it was interesting to have an interview with somebody that, without him, this movie might have never been made. Our next extra is called Cut to Shreds, and it's editor Mark Goldblatt, who actually edited the movie. He talks about his experience editing the movie. He worked with Joe Dante on other movies, including Piranha and other early Joe Dante movies. I found it pretty interesting. He talked a little bit about his history with editing, what his process was. He did say that a lot of the werewolf effects in the movie weren't shot until after the whole rest of production had wrapped, because they were still working. Rick Baker and Rob Bottin were still working on what effects they were going to do for the movie, and how they were going to achieve them. So the effects shooting kept getting pushed back and back in the schedule. So they had actually wrapped production on the non-effects stuff before they shot any of the werewolf stuff. So I thought that was pretty interesting. The next extra is an interview with co-writer Terrence Winkless. He talks about how he worked at different movie studios writing, but he had never really gotten a credit for writing before this. They brought him in to write a draft of the screenplay, and that got him work in the movie industry because he got a credit. He discussed a little bit about where they went with the screenplay. He said basically, as far as it being based on a book, they used the title of the book, and that was it. Like, the screenplay has nothing to do with the book that it's based on, other than using the name. They changed everything else. He did say that he thought the special effects were the star of the movie, that he was very impressed with the different special effects they were able to achieve. Did also say that the character names, Joe Dante actually came up with the character names based on people who had made other werewolf movies. So apparently that's like a little hidden Easter egg. He did mention a few. I don't happen to remember what they are, and he said that most people wouldn't know unless you're like a super horror fan, and then it would be a nice little hidden thing for you to know, but otherwise most people would never catch on. So next up we have, of course, a Scream Factory standard, Horror's Hallowed Grounds with Sean Clark, where he travels around and shows all the different locations that he's able to find for the film. I was really surprised there are so many that he was able to find. He did show the street corner from the beginning of the movie where the phone booth was and where the porno shop was and things like that. A lot of that stuff, the actual locations are not there anymore, but he showed like basically the street that they were on. He did show the occult bookstore, which is actually now a souvenir shop. But he was able to go in and show that, hey, this is the building where they filmed this. And then the real star of this part was he was able to go to a lot of the outdoor locations where The Colony was filmed. So he did identify a couple different places. The outdoor, like, cliffside and the beach from The Colony is Russian Gulch Park, which is in Northern California. So he showed that. The exterior of the cabins where the witch woman lived and the main characters were staying is at a place called Mendocino Woodlands Campground, and he specifically noted that cabin number 2 is the witchy lady's cabin, which is really cool. It's still there. They actually shot in that, so he was able to go inside, show all the different rooms. I mean, obviously it's not dressed like it was for the movie, but you can see that that's the actual building that they shot in, exterior and interior, which is very cool. So that was great. His stuff is always great. And it was very interesting to see how much of that stuff survives, especially in the outdoor type section. So very cool. Next up is an older extra, which looks like it was filmed probably by the studio at the time that the movie was made, because Joe Dante and Rob Bottin and some different people are in this, and they are all very young, so I'm thinking it was probably made in 1988. This is called Making a Monster Movie Inside the Howling. And it's got some interviews, again, with Joe Dante, Rob Bottin, and Patrick McNamara, I believe his name is, the guy who played the psychiatrist in the movie. And it was interesting talking about their special effects, their process of creating the werewolf effects, how it was all very new at the time. Previous to this, the werewolf special effects in a movie would be done like they were done in the original, like Lon Chaney Jr. werewolf movies, The Wolfman, where it's all dissolves with different multiple shots layered over each other, dissolving from one to another. And the effects that they made on this movie, actually, this was the first time anything like that had been used, to pioneer the things with like the air bladders and mechanical faces that stretch and things like that. You know, the same things that you would see in American Werewolf in London as well. So it was pretty interesting to see how they talked about it at the time. Also, I just want to throw in there, I think Rob Bottin is actually a werewolf. He is very fluffy. Look it up. Next up is a short interview with the stop motion animator, David Allen. He did film some stop motion werewolf scenes for the movie. However, the majority of the things that he filmed were not used finally, I guess because they came up with more creature makeup to put on the actors and were able to film things differently. They do show the footage that I guess survives of what he did, all in stop motion, and they do show a bit of that, which it looks really nice. It's nice stop motion, but it doesn't really match with the rest of the feel of the movie, so I guess that's why it wasn't used. And honestly, he seemed a little sad that they didn't actually use his footage. I felt kind of bad for him. All right, continuing on with the extras for The Howling. I should say there are 2 commentary tracks on this Blu-ray. I did not have a chance to watch either one of them because it's horror month and we're very busy and I don't have time to sit and watch the full movie The Howling through 2 more times. But I'll go ahead and let you know what they are in case you're interested. The first is a commentary with the director Joe Dante, with the stars Dee Wallace and Christopher Stone. And also with Robert Picardo, who played Eddie Quist. I suspect that this was probably a commentary track that was filmed for a previous release of this movie, because in one of the other extras it did say that Chris Stone has passed away in the 90s, so I have a feeling this was probably recorded for a DVD release at some point. But I think that would be an interesting commentary to listen to with all of them, all the stars of the movie and the director. The other commentary track is with the author of, I believe, the book, Gary Brandner, which I suspect would also be probably either really interesting or really boring, considering they didn't use any of his book for this movie. They just used the name. So if he's the guy who wrote the original book, then I don't know what he's going to contribute to a commentary track on the movie. So the next extra that is on here, a longer documentary, which appears also to be a little older, not as old as the Making a Monster movie, which I believe was actually filmed in 1980 when they made the movie. This was probably also for a previous DVD release. It's called Unleashing the Beast, Making of the Howling. And it really is exactly what it says, a complete making of documentary from the beginning, screenplay process and getting Joe Dante on board and et cetera, all the way through the filming, all the special effects and everything. And it's really, if you were going to watch one extra on this disc, I would recommend watching this because it's pretty comprehensive as far as interviews with the cast and crew. I'm not going to go into, I did take some notes as to what's in there, but I did find it the most interesting on here besides probably Horror's Hallowed Grounds. And I would highly recommend that if you enjoy this movie that you would watch this extra in particular. And then also, as is typical on most Scream Factory discs, we have some deleted scenes that have the film audio and also commentary. There are a few outtakes as well, which were pretty funny. And also the theatrical trailer and a photo gallery. So all in all, as far as Scream Factory releases go, this is pretty impressive, the amount of stuff they've got on here. It's not quite as comprehensive as some other movies, but again, the amount of stuff that they've managed to pack into this is pretty impressive and well worth your time, I would say. So definitely go and check it out. Like I said, if you're looking to maximize the information and the enjoyment that you get out of these extras and you don't have a lot of time to sit and watch the movie 3 times through so you can hear all the commentaries and watch all these extras, my recommendations would be to watch the Unleashing the Beast documentary and to also watch the Horror's Hallowed Grounds to see the filming locations and things like that.